Okay, so good morning. Today's daf is daf Lamed Vav in Masechet Avodah Zarah. Um, we are talking about various products that are in the possession of somebody who is an idolater, and we apply it more generally to somebody who's not Jewish, and whether or not the product is considered kosher, whether or not we are allowed to eat it and whether or not we are allowed to benefit from it. And so we're not talking obviously about something that's not kosher that we wouldn't be able to eat irrespective of who owns it. But the point is that some of these things, some things we don't want to, such as the bread of a non-Jew, even if it's kosher ingredients, we may want to avoid having eating it. And so, we talked about that yesterday. In general, we Ashkenazim paskin that you can have it, although it's best to avoid it, at least during the Saras Yemei Tshuva, as we're going to see in a moment. So those are some of the topics that we've been discussing. And now we talk about having non-Jewish oil that we mean from olive oil is generally the way we understand it, although it doesn't explicitly note that here. The point is that we're going to now, we said in our Mishnah that one of the things that we don't have from an idolater is their oil. And so as we pick up on the last line of Lamed Hey Amabet, we say the following: V'Hashem Shalahen, the oil that is from them. So shemen, with respect to that, Rav Amar Daniel Gazar Alav. Rav says that we have a gzera from Daniel. Ushmuel Amar, and Shmuel says no, as we turn to Lamed Vav and Aleph, Zalifasan shel Kalim Tumeim Osartan. They were worried that the olive oil would be put in a vessel that wasn't kosher, and the taste of that vessel. I'm sorry. And the I'm sorry. The vessel would be tamei. That's our original thought, is that the vessel would be tamei, impure, and that would cause the oil to be forbidden. But atukuli alma okle taharos ninu. 1 second though, does everybody eat only tahor foods? No, only certain Kohanim and a variety of other people, were so strict as to only eat tahor food. Tame food is absolutely kosher. No, so el azlifa san shel kelim asurin osartan. No, it was the taste of the emission of the vessels that were themselves prohibited that caused the oil to be forbidden, meaning that the taste that would be imparted by a vessel that wasn't kosher would then cause the oil to be forbidden. So Amrle Shmuel Rav. So Shmuel says to Rav, listen, my explanation works best with the history because we are now about to see. Let's take a look and see what does he say. So Bishlam Uladidi, it makes sense according to me. Da Amina Zalifa son shall Kalim Asurin Osartan, because I say that it was the emission of the vessels that was causing the prohibition to exist. Hainu Diki Asa Rav Yitzchak Bar Shmuel Bar Marta Amar. Well, that makes sense now that we understand that Yitzchak Bar Shmuel Bar Marta came, and what did he say? Darish Rabbi Simlai ben Nitzivin. Rabbi Simlai said in Nitzivin, Shemen, when it comes to oil, Rabbi Yehuda, Ubeis Dino, Rabbi Yehuda, this is not actually referring to Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, but somebody in a later generation, and his court, Nimnu alav v'tiru. They voted on it and they said it was permitted. And why did they permit it? Kasavar, no Saint Tam Lifgam Mutar, because they said, listen, what kind of taste is going to be imparted in the oil? Any taste that when you want olive oil, you want the flavor of that olive oil. You do not want it to be flavored by anything else. And anything else that were to be imparted to it, it would cause it to be less good. And therefore, that causes it to not be forbidden, because anytime that we have a no Saint Tam Lifgam, then we're going to say it's not prohibited biblically. And so as a result, so the rabbi said, you know what? In this case, it's no zin tam lefkam. We're going to say that it's permitted. So Kazavar knows, okay, elaludidach. So, but Shmuel goes on and says to Rab, but according to you, to Amra Daniel Gazar Alab, you're the one who says that Daniel made a decree against it. But listen, if Daniel made a decree, Daniel Gazar, Va'asa Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi Umavatale, and Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, and again, it's not necessarily this the Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi who compiled the Mishnah, but rather his grandson, most likely is refers to as his grandson, Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya, that is we're talking about. But in any event, Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya Vatalai, could Rabbi Yehuda have nullified the decree? Vatnan, we have a Mishnah. Ain based in Yachol Levatel Divrei Beis Kaptin Chavero. One court cannot override another court's ruling. Ella im kain gadol himena b'chachmo v'minyan. It's got to be better than the other court, both in the number of rabbis and in the wisdom that those rabbis have. So you can, and of course, nobody's going to be able to compare to Daniel. That's a much earlier generation. He himself was a Navi. So as a result, that's not going to be possible. So how could you, Rav, say that the implication changed? Because the bottom line is that we know that now we do not prohibit oil of non-Jews. That is why you can find, Bertinelli and whatever, all these Italian companies making olive oil that's kosher because all you need is the supervision. Doesn't make a difference that it's been outside a Jew's control. So Amr,
well, I've seen a lot of statements by rabbis that extra virgin olive oil doesn't even need supervision.
Yeah, there you go. That's right, 100%. Because the point is that we know that that it's kosher because of the regulations associated with saying that it's extra virgin olive oil. Absolutely. So Amrle Simlai Luda Ka Amrat. So he said to Shmuel, "You're telling me something about Simlai? He's from Lud, shiny Ludai, and they're different. The Mizalzalu." Because they actually don't respect the rabbi's rulings. Whoa, that's a pretty extreme statement. So Amar Le, so Shmuel responds, Eshlach Le, should I go and tell him that you send him a message that you said that? No, so Ikasif, so Rab became a little bit embarrassed. He realized that maybe wasn't the right answer. So Amar Rab, Imheim lo darshu, anan lo darshinan. So just because I'm going to show you how it looks like it comes from Sefer Daniel, and just because they didn't figure that out doesn't mean that we couldn't figure that out. So v'haksiv, because after all, it says, what does it say in Daniel? This is Daniel Perak Aleph Pasuk Chet. Vayasem Daniel al libo. Daniel put to his heart. Asher lo yisga'al befas bag hamelach uviyin mishtav, that he should not be defiled by the king's bread, food, nor by the king's drinks. So now, by the wine of his drinks. So what? But why does it say drinks? Meaning, why multiple? Wine is a wine, but what is it? Why does it refer to drinks? With two drinks, it's referring to. Echad mishtei yayin ve'echad mishtei shemen. So what was Daniel saying? He's saying that I don't want to eat the king's food. Here he's been appointed sort of the leader, the assistant to the king. He doesn't want to eat the king's food, and he doesn't want to drink the king's drinks. So the point,
well, of course not. It's not kosher.
Well, no, that's not at all it. Indeed, the implication is it's important to remember that the ingredients list of any product that was made, 2,500 years ago was much shorter and much more likely to be actually kosher than what?
Bishulakum.
Yes, but we haven't gotten to that. That's going to be a separate a decree. Bishul akum is not the cooking of a non-Jew is not a biblical prohibition. And so we are dealing now in the Daniel age of very early rabbinic Judaism, or the sort of the understanding of rabbinic Judaism. And so as a result, we're understanding that this Daniel statement is Daniel saying that we need to have a prohibition on the olive oil, at least according to Rav, the olive oil of non-Jews. The Rav Savar alibo sam. So Rav says, so explain, how do we understand Rav and Shmuel here? Rav understands that when it says in the beginning of that pasuk, Vayasem Daniel alibo, it means Ulukol Yisrael hora, that not only did he think to himself, but he then taught it to all of Israel. Ushmuel Savar, no, alibo sam Ulukol Yisrael lo hora. He thought it, yeah, of course, that's what it says in Daniel, but that doesn't mean that he taught it as a decree for everybody. People will put on themselves certain stringencies, and this was a stringency for himself, not for everybody. B'Shem and Daniel Gazar. 1 second. How can you, Rav, say now? Now it's the Gemara asking the questions. How can you, Rav, say that Daniel made this decree against having olive oil? V'Amar Bali Amar Avimi Nusa'a Mishmei de Rav. But 1 second, Bali said in the name of Avimi Nusua, who said in the name of Rav, meaning Rav himself, it was reported. What did he say? Pitan v'shamnan yenan uvnoseyen kulan shmona asar davarhain. That the bread, oil, wine, and daughters of idol worshippers, all of them were part of a decree that was part of the 18 decrees. What are the 18 decrees? So in Masechah Shabbos,
that's Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel. Yeah,
yes,
they set up in the attic. They were in the attic that day.
Exactly. So they went to visit Hananiah ben Chizkiah ben Garon, and there the Beis Shammai had more people than Beis Hillel, and they passed 18 different rulings basically over the objections of Beis Hillel. And these 4 items were all part of one enactment, one of the 18: bread, oil, wine, and the daughters of idolaters. So as a result, we see that it actually happened. The decree about olive oil seems to have happened much later than Daniel. Well, and you want to say that Daniel originally made the decree and it wasn't generally accepted. And then the students of Hillel and Shammai came and it was accepted. Imkain, my asadusa, the Rav. Well, then why is Rav telling us that it's from the days of Daniel? That's not relevant. So Ela Daniel Gazar alav be'ir va'asu inu v'gazor afilu b'sad. So no, what's talking about is the following: in a city where you can access Jewish oil, that's where Daniel made the Gezerah. He was in the palace of the king, after all. But where Shammai and Hillel came, and they said that they're going to make the Gezerah. And it's interesting, by the way, even though Beis Hillel was opposed to the Gezerah, we're saying that it came from them because they were voted on it. And, so it's interesting to think about it from that perspective. But in any event, the point is their decree was about the fields. And so as a result, the point is that they were saying everywhere do we have to now observe this. So Rebbe Yehuda Hanasi, Hechi Matzi, Lemishra Takanta de Talmud Shammai, de Talmidei de Shammai v'Hillel. So 1 second, but we still are back to our original question. According to you, Rav, according to me, Shmuel, it all makes sense that we would undo this decree because the decree was based on the principle that notein tam lifgam would be asur. And in the end, the Gemara, we conclude that notein tam lifgam is mutar. And so as a result, that we're going to change the ruling. And that's why we would change the ruling. But if it were a decree, meaning that's about kashrus, a ruling about kashrus. So if it's a rule about kashrus, so then we can reach a conclusion, and that is different from a halachic conclusion that is different from what we had before. But if this is a decree Then we have the principle that you need a greater court in number and learning, and yet we don't have that. So again, so Rebbe Yehu the Nasi Hechi Matzi LaMishra Takanta de Talmidi de Shammai v'Hillel. How could he undo something that the students of Hillel and Shammai established? After all, even though your Rebbe Yehuda Nasi is great, but the students of Shammai and Hillel are considered above him because they're an earlier generation. V'atanan ein beis din yachol levatel divrei beis din chavero ela im kain gadol hemena b'chachma u'b'minyan. They could only undo it if they're greater in in intelligence and in number. V'od, and moreover, now that we've said that this is one of the 18 decrees of Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai, ha'amar Rabba bar Barchana, amar Rabbi Yochanan, but Kol, when it came to all Yachol Levatel based in Divrei, based in Chavero, in general, one court has the ability to undo something that was done by another court. Chutz mishmona asar davar, except for the 18 things. Shafilu yavo Eliyahu based, ein shomelo. So in that situation, even if you have a court that is better, greater in number and in chachma, you're not going to listen to it. And so as a result, how can you, Rav, say that this was actually an earlier decree? And on some level, this is even a question according to Shmuel, meaning if there was in fact a decree by Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel, so how could you come to the conclusion otherwise? So Amar Rav Mesharshia Matam, why is it that we say that the 18 different enactments cannot be undone? It's because the Jewish people accepted the prohibition was distributed across Israel, meaning that the Jewish people accepted it. But Shemen lo pashat isura berov Yisrael. Turns out that the prohibition of oil of non-Jews was not something that was generally accepted. To Amar Rabbi Shmuel bar Abba, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Yashvu Rabosenu ubadku al shemen, that the teachers went and they got together and they looked at the story and saw what was happening with respect to the oil of idolaters. Shelo Pasha Isura Berov Yisrael. And they found that even though the rabbis might have said it's prohibited, it was not spread through the Jewish community.
There's a cloud. גזירה על יהודים שלא יכולים לעמוד בם.
Yes, that's exactly that phrase is what we're about to say in 10 seconds. And so as a result, the rabbis, namely Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, relied on what Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel said. And then what Rabbi Elazar bar Tzadok say? Because Shahayu Omrim, because what did they say? Exactly as Kenneth just pointed out, Ein gozrin gzeira ala tzibor. We don't impose a decree on the community. Elaim kain rov tzibor yechol la'amod. But unless most of the community is able to exist with it. The bottom line is that this is a general principle that they say in connection with rabbis and communities in general. You can't get too far ahead of your community. If you're a little bit, the rabbi needs to be, a little bit above and beyond in terms of the rabbi's knowledge and performance and observance. But if he's too far, then there's no relationship, and people are disconnected, and then they just give up on it. And so as a result, the point is that you need to have that connection. So Da'amar of Ada bar Ahava Mikra. Well, what's the source for this concept that you can't put on the public something that the public can't accept? So as we turn to Lamed Vav Amabet, B'me'era atem, this is a pasuk in Malachi, Perek Gimel Pasuk Tet, B'me'era atem ne'arim, with a curse you're going to get cursed. V'osi, and to me, this is God talking. Atem kovim hagoy kulo. You're going to be robbing me. You, the entire nation. So what's the story here? So what is this about? So let's take a look at Rashi, top Rashi on Lamed Vav Amud Bet. Atem mikablim alechem gzeira ba'arur ubiklala, that you accept some kind of decree with the understanding that if you violate the decree, you're going to be cursed. V'ne'asar lechem, and you then have that prohibition on you. And what do you do after this prohibition has been accepted by the public? V'achar kach osiatem kovim gozlim. You then go and you steal from me, meaning you violate the decree that you yourself have accepted. Shatem ne'anim shuv min ha'arurim. You have now benefited from that which was cursed and said that you shouldn't be benefiting from. And so so that's the way we're understanding this pasuk. So basically, once you identify something as prohibited with a curse, meaning that the rabbis say that this is going to be prohibited and you have accepted it, so then if you do that thing, it's like robbing God. But what does the pasuk say at the end? Hagoy kulo. It says the entire nation. So ika goy kulo in. Elo, lo. So what do you need for the decree to become operative? You need the entire nation to have accepted it. And of course, when we say entire nation, we don't mean literally the entire nation. We have a general principle of rove, that rove is the majority is like the whole thing. And so as a result, as long as you have the majority, that's going to be the problematic. And so as a result, this is the pasuk that serves as the basis for this principle that you need, that the Jewish people needs to accept the decree. In general, the majority of the Jewish people need to accept the decree before it becomes truly effective. Okay, so Gufa. So let's take a look at this statement. Meaning, what was the statement? This was the statement in connection with that Bali said in the name of Avimi of Nesua, in the name of Rav, namely the fact that the prohibition was a decree, one of the 18 decrees of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. So we're going to quote that language again to try and understand all four of the things that were prohibited. Because what did they say? Amar Bali, Amar Ravimi, Amar Nesuna, Mishmei de Rav. Pitan, their bread, Vishamnan, their oil, Yenan, their wine, Ubnoseyan, and their daughters, Kulan, Mishmona Asar Davarhain. All of these were from the 18 things that they were enacted by Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel. So one second. B'noseihen Maihi. What is this reference to the daughters? So Amar Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak, Gazru al B'noseihen Nidus Ma'arisosan. That when it comes, what does it mean? It means that a non-Jewish woman is treated as being impure, like a nida, even when they're very young. Meaning, even before they are necessarily menstruating, we're going to, as a way of sort of distancing ourselves from them, we're going to treat them like a nida. Ugniva mishmei de Rav Amar, and Geniva said in the name of Rav, Kulan mishum avodas kochavim gazru behen. All of these decrees were done because of idolatry. Kiyasa Rav Acha bar Ada Amar Rabbi Yitzchak. And when Rav Acha bar Ada came from Eretz Yisrael, he said in the name of Rabbi Yitzchak, Gazru al pitan mishum shamnan, that they decreed because of the bread, decreed the prohibition regarding the bread because of their oil. 1 second, my ulme deshemen bipas. Why would the oil be more prohibited than the bread? Meaning, why are you saying that the oil is going to be the reason to prohibit the bread? Ella alpitan vishamnan mishum yenan. No. What he said was the bread and the oil is all prohibited because of the wine. Val yenan mishum benosehen. And the wine was prohibited because we don't want to get involved with their daughters. Val benosehen mishum davar acher. And their daughters is based on something else. And what is that davar acher? First line of Rashi, of the narrow lines of Rashi on Lamed Vav Mebed, Ubenoseyan Asur Mishum Davar Acher, Avodah Elilim. It's a idol worship. So that's what we're talking about when we say Davar Acher. V'al Davar Acher Mishum Davar Acher. And now, in a very cryptic statement, the Gemara continues that the prohibition of something else was a result of a prohibition about something else. So, but what is that all talking about? So Rashi is going to highlight that. We're going to explain it in a moment, but let's see how Rashi opens the translation. Val davar acher, shalohus karkan. There is something else that we have not yet mentioned. Gazru, that the rabbis made a gzera, mishum davar acher, because of something else, the lo mishum avodas elilim, and not necessarily because of idol worshiper. And lekamen mafarshla, but we are going to see, God willing, at the end of the day today, hopefully before we finish our day, we will see what it is referring to. Otherwise, we will begin that tomorrow. But so what have we seen? We've seen that we decreed that this decree with respect to not having relations with non-Jewish women is one of the decrees of the Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel. But Benosayan do Raisahi. How can you say that it's one of the decrees of Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel? It's biblical. Dixiv lotus.
Bat Hanan. Parshat Bat Hanan.
Yeah, Lotus Chatenbam. Exactly. In Dvarim Parak Zayin, Pasuk Gimel, in Parshas Eskanon, it says you cannot marry them. You shouldn't marry them. So that's pretty clear. So no, Doraisa Sheba Umos Aval Shar Ovdei Kochavim Lo. No, you have to remember the context of the pasuk. The pasuk is talking about the 7 Canaanite nations. And so it's only the Canaanite nations that were prohibited biblically to marry. The others were not. And so Ava'asu Inhu V'Gazar Afilu Desharo de Kochavim. And so what Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel were coming to decree was that even other idol worshippers you're not allowed to marry. 1 second though. Ul Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai de Amar Ki Yasir Es bin Chama 1 second. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai actually derives that prohibition from the fact that when it comes to turning away somebody to serve idols, it says, "For he will turn your son away from me, and they will serve other gods." So l'rabas kol hamasiros. So that includes all those who are going to turn the Jewish people away from God. So that implies not only the 7 nation idol worshippers, but all idol worshippers are prohibited. So ma'ikal meimer. So what can you say? So ella de oraiza ishus derachasnus. No. So all right. So according to Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, who says that you can't marry a non-Jew, even who's not part of the 7 nations. So we'll say that no, what the prohibition in the Torah is about actual marriage. But also inu gazar afilu derachznus. And what Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, when they said that the daughters of idol worshippers are prohibited, it's referring to having extra marital relations, a relationship that is not sanctified by the bonds of marriage. So znus nami
extramarital or premarital? Does it just extramarital?
Well, meaning outside the context of marriage, meaning premarital. That's I don't mean extramarital as in if you're in a marriage and you have an extramarital affair. I mean just outside the context of marriage, meaning without marrying the person. Znus nami based in shall shame gazra. 1 second though, we have an way earlier prohibition because Shem, namely the son of Noach, he also said that you can't have promiscuity in general. Diksiv Yomer Yehuda Hotziu V'tzisaref. Meaning, if we go back to the story of Yehuda and Tamar was, supposed to get married to Yehuda, to Yehuda's third son,
Sheila,
to Sheila, excuse me, sorry, to Sheila, Yehuda's third son, and then turns up that she's pregnant, and so as a result, Yehuda says that she needs to be taken out and burned. Why? Because it's understood by the rabbis that Shem, in the yeshiva, Shem of Aver, made the decree that basically you're not supposed to have, relations outside the context of marriage. So as a result, we can't say that even just having a relationship outside of marriage is problematic. No, so Elado Raisa Ovid Kochavim Abal Bas Yisrael. That prohibition is regarding a non-Jewish male, an idolater male who has relations with a Jewish woman. But the Mashka Basrei, because we're worried that she's going to follow him and then as a result be an idolater. About
But
Yisrael.
whoever heard of a gezerah resulting in a death penalty?
No, that the well,
If
that's a good question.
it's not one of the Noahide laws.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. I have to do some thinking about that. That's a great question. That's a great question. Shkach. Let me do some thinking. I'll see what I can find. Aval
Okay.
Yisrael. Haba al avodas kochavim lo. So what? But what was the situation there? That was a non-Jewish man that was assumed having relations with a Jewish woman. So, but what about a Jewish man having relations with a non-Jewish woman? So va'asu inu gazor ba'afilu Yisrael abal avodas kochavim. And so, what was the decree of Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai? It was Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. It was about a Jewish man with a non-Jewish woman.
Well, wait a minute. The way we can go long before that. Last week's parsha, Pinchas, with Zimri, wasn't he?
Yeah, again, you are on fire, Kenneth. So Yisrael abal avodas kochavim. Halakha lamosh misinahi. What are you talking about? A Jewish man with a non-Jewish woman. We know that that's prohibited from halakha lamosh Sinai.
Kanayim Poigimbo.
The Amar Mar, because it says Haboel Aramis Kanain Poginbo. Exactly. If a Jew has relations with an Aramean woman, so a zealot is allowed to kill him. That's exactly this past week's parsha, 100%. Another beautiful Davyomi coincidence. So Elado Raisa Bivarhesia Kamasa Shahaya. No, so what was the biblical prohibition? It was to do something in public, the way Cosby and Zimri did. But when you have also Inu Gazar Afila Bitsina, and what Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel were coming to decree was even in private. 1 second though, B'tzimai Nami Beis Dino Shel Chashmonai Gazru. It was prohibited well before that, hundreds of years before Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, in the time of the Chashmonaim. Deki Asa Rabdimi Amar, for when Rabdimi came from Eretz Yisrael to Babel, he said, Beis Dino Shel Chashmonai Gazru, Yisrael Haba al Ha'avodas Kochavim Chayev Mishum Nashka. That a Jew who has relations with a non-Jewish woman, he's liable for 4 different sins. And ki asa Ravin Amar, and when Ravin came, he said, no, it's not those 4. It's not Mishum Nashka, but Mishum Nashgaz. It's because of 4 different, the 3 of the same sins, and the 4th is a different sin. So what are those sins? Thankfully, Rashi helps us out and tells us what each of the letters stands for. So Nashka, Rashi 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lines down in the narrow lines of Rashi. Gazra aleim mishum nida. So the nun is for nida. The rabbanan, that would be a rabbinic prohibition. That again, as even though we don't say that a non-Jewish woman has the concept of being a nida, we're going to say that it's as if you violated the halacha of nida d'Rabbanan, va'avagat avodos kochavim ein dama mitam'a min haTorah, even though their blood does not cause them, they're having a period does not cause them to become a nida from the Torah. Sharei hi kebehema, because they're not treated like human, just like an animal's menstruation. It does not create any tumah, so too a non-Jew. Chachamim gazru ala mishum gazru ala, and so but the rabbis made a gzera against it. Umishum shivcha, and the second prohibition is because we have a prohibition that you're not allowed to marry a Jewish a maidservant, a non-Jewish maidservant whose who actually has to observe Jewish laws, because if she becomes freed, she becomes a full Jew. But you're not allowed to marry her if you're a free Jew. So that's a second prohibition. We're worried that you're going to come to do that. Mishum avodas kochavim. We're worried that you're going to come to idol worshiper. I mean, to ki'ilu mischaten ba. That you're going to actually go and marry her, derech ishus, in terms of marriage. And we saw again that that was something that was prohibited. Even I think that my best answer to your question, Charlie, is that when it's a decree that has sort of been established in the Torah, so then it becomes essentially like a Torah law as opposed to the traditional decree. That's my initial gut reaction as to the answer. But again, I'll do some more digging, God willing, bli neder, and
So
see what I can.
there's a problem with the idea of the Hashmonaim as having established a decree, because the Herodians themselves intermarried and
Yes.
had a with non-Jews.
Well, that
One Berenice, the sister of the second Agrippa, had an affair with no less than Titus, and even Mozart wrote about that.
well, I think the point is that generally we understand that the Gemara thinks that all of the Herodian kings were all effectively from the slaves, because of the story where the last of the Chashmonim jumps off the roof, etc. So that's going to it's not a proof
Yeah.
that it's permitted, but in any event, so that is the third thing, is that we're worried about coming to actually marry, and the gimel then is goy, that we're concerned that somebody's going to marry somebody who's not Jewish. And
How
what's
is that? The Torah talks about in Parshat Mishpatim, a person can take a maidservant for his son, and in Parshat Ki Teitzei, where he goes out to war and takes a woman, he can take a non-Jewish woman. Now, certain rules and so forth apply and what he has to do, but he can take a maidservant.
You're absolutely correct. First of all, let's go back and start with the first comment, because the first comment, that is a Jewish maidservant
Okay.
that you could take for your son. So that is not what we're
Okay.
talking about. We're
Okay,
talking
all
about
right.
a non-Jewish maidservant.
All right.
So that's point number one. But your second point is absolutely right. In general, almost everything that exists is permitted in the Torah in proper context. Meaning that there's very little in this world that is prohibited in all situations. And so you're just highlighting that you're absolutely right. And the point is that in this context, the marrying a non-Jew is prohibited, or we're worried that having having a marriage-based relationship with a non-Jewish woman will bring you to have a marriage-based relationship, and that itself is going to be prohibited from the Torah. Umishum eshes ish de beulas baal yesh lahen. And according to the first view, this is according to Rav Dimi. Rav Dimi said that he was worried about Eshes Ish, about the woman being treated like she was married. That in fact, Yesh Lahan B'nei Noach, that in fact there is a concept of marriage for people who are not Jewish. Diksiv v'hi b'ulas Baal, that she's a married. V'Yisrael hirgil b'kach hoa ubal leha b'nidata. Asi limibal nami nida Yisraelit. And again, what is all these concerns about? That if in fact the Jew has relations with this non-Jewish woman, who of course is a nida because he doesn't go to the mikvah, so he's going to actually come and have relations with a Jewish nida. V'asi leminsav, and not only that, but v'asi leminsav shifcha, and he's going to come to marry a shifcha, which is prohibited. V'avar mishum lo yeh kadesh, that quote lo yeh. What's the pasuk?
It's Kadesha.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to pronounce that word, but okay. Lo yeh kadesh mibnei Yisrael, that you shouldn't have a promiscuous man within the Jewish people. So v'asi leminsav lavodas kochavim, and you're going to end up and you're going which is a prohibition about a man having relations with a shifcha, and we're worried that you're going to then go and marry a non-Jew, v'avar alo titchatein, and that you shouldn't marry them. V'asi lemival eshes ish Yisrael, and in the end, Yeah, this is sort of like the Gemara's parallel to it all ends with and it'll all come to mixed dancing. But the point is it'll all come to actually having an extramarital affair. So that was the position of Rav Dimi, and Ravin said Mishum Nashgaz. Nida, that's the same. Nun is the same. Shivcha is the same. Avodah Kochavim, meaning Goy, is the same. Zona, no, the concern is not about coming to have relations with an Ashes Ish that's Jewish. That's going to, nobody would actually do that. But the concern is that if for a Kohen, She'im Kohen, who, that if the person is a Kohen, Yesh Kam Mishum Lav de Zona, then there's a prohibition of acting like, of having a relations with a promiscuous woman. Velo Lav Mishum
Mamish.
Lo
No
Below,
love
below lav
mamish.
mamish. Oh, thank you. Below lav mamish. It's not an actual prohibition. Ela gzeira, but rather it's just a gzeira. Mishum zona Yisraeli. That the point is that we don't want you to have relations with a Kohen, to have relations with a promiscuous Jewish woman. That would shenivala la asur la, because that would actually be prohibited. But the point is that, and so as a result, these are the four things that are gzeras that either Rav Dimi or Ravin said in connection with this. But the bottom line is that it was the court of the Chashmonaim who said that you shouldn't have a non-marriage based relationship with a non-Jewish woman. So you can't say that the prohibition that the Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai came up with was of a non-marriage relationship. So ki kazru beis dino shel chashmonayim bia aval yichud lo. So no, 1 second, we can say, you know what? The chashmonayim prohibited having relations, but they didn't say you couldn't be alone with a non-Jewish woman. So for us, inu v'gazar afilu yichud. And so what did they come and do? Is they said that even being alone would be prohibited. 1 second, Yichud Nami Beis Dino Shel David Gazru. We know that David HaMelech ended up having a gzera. Da'amar Rabbi Yehuda, Ba'osa Shah. At that time, and Rashi tells us that the time was Mi'osa Amnon v'Tamar, Maisa Amnon v'Tamar, that when it was when Amnon and Tamar had their illicit relationship, Gazru al Yichud. David made a decree that a man shouldn't be alone with a woman. So Amri, no, Hasam Yichud de Bas Yisrael. No, that's a Jewish man with a Jewish woman. But they didn't make the decree on non-Jewish women. Also, inu gazru afilu ayichud de. And so what Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel came to do is say that even there you can't be alone with a non-Jewish woman. Yichud de Bas Yisrael do reizehi. 1 second, you can't say that the prohibition of David, the Davidic court was prohibiting being
We have
alone.
the matter of the Sota, which is in Parshat Naso.
Yeah, well, we're going to get to that. No, we're not going to touch on that. But that would be, you could explain by saying that was a prohibition only because the husband said that you can't be alone with this man. So that would actually, in some level, argue that yichud would not be a biblical prohibition because it's only prohibited when the husband says that you're not allowed to be alone, and it would only be for a Jewish woman who's married. But here we're dealing with a Jewish woman who's not married. So the Amar Rabbi Yochanan by Mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Yehotzadak Remez liyichud min Torah minayin. How do I know that there's a hint to being there's a prohibition to being alone in the Torah? Shenemar ki yisischa achicha ben imecha, that the Torah says when it comes to being concerned about going astray, your brother, the son of your mother, is going to cause you to instigate you and say, let's go serve other gods. Ben meses uben av eino meses. Well, 1 second. Why did the Torah specifically tell you that the son of your mother is going to be the situation, going to cause you to go astray, and not the son of your father? Ela ben misyached im imo. But it's to hint that a ben and a mother and a son have the ability to be alone. But when it comes to other prohibited relations in the Torah, you're not allowed to be alone. And so as a result, that's a hint to the fact that you're not allowed to be alone in the Torah. So as a result, there was no need for David to decree only about Jews. So no, yichud doraisa de eshes ish. No, you're wrong, because what is the prohibition in the Torah of yichud? It would only be with a woman who was already married. For us, David v'gazar afilu ayichud depnuya. And what David came to do was saying even an unmarried Jewish woman. And now, what Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel said is that not only can you not be alone with a married woman, and not only can you not be alone with a Jewish woman, but you cannot be alone with a non-Jewish woman. All right, so let's get to that last piece, and with that we'll conclude. Maya davar acher mishum davar acher. We had this strange line that we saw in the Gemara earlier that they decreed with respect to one thing about something else, and we don't even know what it says. So what it's about? So Amar of Nachman bar Yitzchak gazru al tinok oved kochavim sheyitame beziva. What they said is that when it comes to a young boy, that he is considered tamei as a state of ziva, meaning that it's like he had a various flow that is not a simple normal emission, and so as a result, he will convey tuma. Shelo yehi tinuk Yisrael ragel etzlo, because we don't want our Jewish sons to be associated with him. We want to sort of discourage that connection because because we're worried that they'll end up engaging in improper behavior, because again, the improper behavior that is typical among idolaters, and so as a result, we worry that they would engage in that kind of behavior if they were alone. So to Amar Rabbi Zera, Tsar Gadol Haya Li Eitzel Rabbi Asi. I had when I was with Rabbi Asi, I worked very hard at doing the following. For Rabbi Asi Eitzel Rabbi Yochanan, and Rabbi Asi had the same question that I asked him. He asked it to Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan Eitzel Rabbi Yanai, and Rabbi Yochanan brought it to Rabbi Yanai. Rabbi Yanai Eitzel Rabbi Nasan ben Amram, and he brought it to Rabbi Nasan ben Amram. Rabbi Nasan ben Amram Eitzel Rabbi, and he brought it to Rabbi Yehuda Anasi. Tinok Ovid Kochavim Me'em Asaimatamim Mesiva. How old does the boy need to be in order to be able to be considered Tameh as a Ziva? So Amrali ben Yomo, his initial reaction was 1 day. The Kishabati Eitzel Rabbi Chia Amrali, but then when I came to Rabbi Chia, he told me Ben Teisha Shanim V'Yom Echad. No, it's not 1 day, but 9 years in a day. The Kishabati Havertzesi Dvari Lifnei Rabbi Amarli. So when I came and he said it back to Rebbe, he said to me, Hanak Dvarai, leave aside what I said. Ve'echos Divrei Rabbi Chia bar Amar Tinok Ovid Kokavim Emasai Mitamim Beziva Ben Teisha Shanim V'Yom Echad. Leave aside what I said about 1 day. Focus on what Rabbi Chia said. He's right. It's 9 years old. So the Hoel V'Ro'ei Lebiya, and the reason is because that is when you are fit to have relations. A boy is fit to have relations. So Matami Nami is Beziva, and that's why we're going to treat the non-Jewish boy as if he is a Zav. So Amaravina Hilkach Hatinokas Ovedes Kochavim Bas Shalosh Shanim V'Yom Echad. And so Ravina said, you know what? And that's why when it comes to a girl, we're going to treat her as if Hoel Uru'uya Levia, once she is fit to have relations, which is considered 3 years old, Mitama Nami Beziva, she's also going to be considered a Ziva. So Pshita, that's obvious. Why do you even need to mention it? No, it's not so obvious. Look, the 9-year-old boy knows what he's doing. He has some sense of intelligence, and so as a result, he's going to try and convince his Jewish friend to engage in improper behavior. But the 3-year-old girl doesn't know what she's doing. She's not going to be able to get somebody else to sin. Nonetheless, Kamash Malan, Ravina tells us that actually the prohibition applies from the age of 3 years old, and so that the Gezerah is from that age. But the bottom line is, again, Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, their decree about non-Jewish women was not about having relations, but rather it was about being alone with them. And it applies both whether the non-Jewish woman is married or not married. And of course, the prohibition with respect to a Jewish woman would predate that. And the bottom line is, with respect to the oil of non-Jews, is that based on the principle that we only accept decrees that have been accepted by the Jewish people, and this decree was never accepted by the Jewish people. So as a result, that decree has gone by the wayside. At least according to Rav and according to Shmuel, it went by the wayside because the whole principle, the whole basis for the prohibition was based on the faulty premise that nosein tam lifgam is asur. Now we know that nosein tam lifgam is mutar, and so as a result, we're going to say that the oil of non-Jews is permitted. So we'll end there, and God willing, we'll pick up from that point tomorrow and look forward to continuing our learning together.
I'll wait for tomorrow, David.
All right, I'll check in just a moment and we'll see. Have a great day.